for the future and to make them both rich? He jolted out of his memory as he caught a snippet of conversation behind him that seemed to be coming from a pair of elderly women he vaguely recognised, huddled in the corner. "It was such a shock when it happened, though, Martha. We all thought Alicia was as fit as a flea." "But what's to become of the boy?" he heard the other woman say in a whisper. "His uncle is coming to collect him later, and taking him to stay at his home, Ginny just told me." His uncle? That was the first he'd heard of it. Would it be Uncle Walter or Uncle Herbert? He preferred Herbert, as he was always so full of fun and a regular to the house. He also loved Aunt Marge's jam and cream scones. He always got a warm welcome at their modest home. But Uncle Walter he barely knew. He hadn't seen him since last Christmas. The man had never married and barely smiled. He hoped that wasn't the uncle the women spoke of. "What are you doing all on your own, child?" It was the voice of his next-door neighbour, Ginny, breaking into his thoughts. She'd been taking care of him since his ma had died. He gulped and, looking up at her, wiped a tear away. She smiled and hugged him to her. "Sorry I went missing for a moment there, Archie. I had to go outside to see if the undertaker had arrived and got caught out by Mrs. Mac from across the street, who wanted all the gen from me. Course I never gave her any. Why should she know all the ins and outs when she can't be bothered to call to the house and pay her respects today of all days?" She pulled away and took his small hand in her rather larger one. He curled his fingers around her warm hand. Ginny's hands always seemed as warm as her heart. "Now, I'll tell you what's going to happen, shall I?" He nodded, his eyes glistening with tears, his stomach jittery and unsettled, as he sensed that his life was about to change forever. Ginny took a deep breath and let it out again. Then she ran a hand through her flame-red hair. "The funeral procession will leave the house in a few minutes. Your mother's coffin will be placed in the horse-drawn hearse, and the rest of us will walk behind it. The church is only a couple of streets away, so there won't be much walking for us to do. Not enough to tire us out at any rate. Now, be a good lad, as I tell everyone what's going to happen, won't you?" He nodded again, just as a fat tear rolled down his cheek, and he tasted its saltiness. "Here you are, lad." Ginny slipped her hand into her skirt pocket and handed him her embroidered handkerchief. "It is clean. I have another one in me other pocket. Now dry your eyes and blow your nose," she commanded. He did as told, hoping no one would notice, but thankfully they were all too busy muttering among themselves to pay heed to him. Archie swallowed hard as he found himself surging forward in amongst the crowd to the street outside, where a black hearse attached to 2 black horses with feathered plumage stood ready to receive his mother's coffin. He felt so lost in amongst it all. "Paid for by her rich brother," he heard a man in the crowd say, but when he turned around he couldn't work out which man had said it, as there were so many wearing black hats and jackets. His rich uncle was Uncle Walter. He'd often wondered about him and how come he was wealthy when his mother was poor. Uncle Herbert, though, wasn't his real uncle at all. Herbert and Marge were good friends of his mother's, so why did Ma say he was? He could never work that one out. But there was no sign of Uncle Walter at the funeral. Why was that? Then he heard the same male voice say, "Betty wouldn't lower himself to come here today after all she did to her family. Disgraced the Brookings, she did." What could his ma have possibly done to disgrace the Brookings? Wasn't that Uncle Walter's surname? It was all a mystery to him. Archie turned again to see the men were holding their bowler hats and flat caps to their chests. Then he noticed it. 2 men in black top hats and long coats, carrying his mother's coffin. The men looked very serious. No one smiled, and the crowd seemed to bow their heads in unison. He gulped. When he'd been inside, he somehow managed to pretend the coffin was part of the furniture. It was the only way he could cope with it all. But out here, his mother's coffin looked more real somehow. The polished mahogany wood, gleaming gold name plaque, and matching handles made his stomach flip over. He heard someone let out a low whistle,